This is an advertisement by BetterHelp. January arrives with a sense of expectation and change. But real change is rarely loud or dramatic.
It's noticing what no longer needs to be there. Thoughts you keep turning over even when they're not helping.
And when you live with those long enough, they can start to feel normal until you pause and see them more clearly. That's where perspective helps. Not fixing yourself, just creating space to understand what's been weighing you down.
Therapy can offer that space, a clearer view of your own patterns and what's worth holding on to. BetterHelp makes starting straightforward. You answer a few questions and they match you with a qualified therapist. If it doesn't feel right, you can switch at any time.
Whether you're into New Year's resolutions or not, working to better yourself is something everyone should do. And you don't even need to bulldoze your life to do it. Simply use BetterHelp.
BetterHelp makes it easy to get matched online with a qualified therapist. Sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/restishistory. That's betterhelp.com/restishistory.
This podcast is brought to you by Carvana. Car shopping shouldn't feel like preparing for a marathon of paperwork. That's why Carvana makes buying and financing your car easy. From start to finish, search thousands of vehicles with great prices. All online, all on your time. And when you're ready, your new car shows up right at your door. It doesn't get better than that. Buy your car the easy way. On Carvana. Delivery fees may apply.
Alas, now o'er the civilized world there hangs a gloom for brave General Gordon that was killed in Khartoum. He was a Christian hero and a soldier of the cross, and to England his death will be a very great loss. He was very cool in temper, generous and brave, the friend of the poor, the sick and the slave. And many a poor boy he did educate, and laboured hard to do so early and late. The inimitable poetic style of friend of the show, William McGonagall, whose great masterpiece on the disaster of the Tay Bridge we've already featured on The Rest is History in our 12 Days of Christmas episode. And Dominic, the death of General Gordon, the archetypal Victorian hero at Khartoum in Sudan on the 26th of January 1885, was seen as a disaster fit to rank with the Tay Bridge disaster, wasn't it?
Oh, a far greater disaster than the Tay Bridge disaster, Tom. The death of Gordon at Khartoum is one of the absolute emblematic moments of the Victorian era. It's an extraordinary shock to Victorian Britain. It's one of the great media events of the Victorian age. And General Gordon is one of the absolute kind of emblematic martyrs of the British Empire, one of the most famous men in the world, I would say, at the point that he died.
So fascinating you say that, because we've got a question from Stefan Jensen, another friend of the show, who's always popping up with his questions. I think he's been in abeyance recently, but he's back. And he says, who on earth is General Charles George Gordon?
What a thing to say, Stefan.
What a thing to say. Well, but I mean, I'll be honest. I mean, I have a kind of vague sense of him standing at the top of some steps with people with spears getting ready to spit him, the kind of famous archetypal image. But apart from that, I didn't really know a huge amount about him. But basically this week I've gone down General Gordon-shaped rabbit hole. I mean, they're really, really, it is a brilliant topic. And one of the things that is brilliant about Gordon is precisely what has happened to his subsequent reputation. So someone who is so famous is now not a name to play with, by and large, but also Victorian hero, the archetype of a Christian Victorian hero, but then subsequently gets kind of skewered by Lytton Strachey in his famously feline volume of biographies of eminent Victorians. So what is it? It's
Dr. Arnold, Florence Nightingale, and Cardinal
Manning.
Cardinal Manning. Newman. Is that one of the cardinals?
Yeah. So the question of how we're to understand Gordon, I mean, it kind of bleeds into the broader topic of how are we to understand the British Empire, all those, I mean, very kind of hot button issue.
Yeah.
And it kind of also feeds into the broader theme, which is the question of how reputations over the course of history have evolved, how some people go up, some people go down. And we are going to be talking about that live, are we not?
We are. That's a very nice
Wednesday.
link, Tom. We're doing
very
a
much.
live show, aren't we, about reputations for Rest is History Club members. Now, maybe not everybody listening to this will know about the Rest is History Club. We may have some new listeners. Yeah, but may have new listeners, Tom, who are attracted by the subject of General Gordon. And you know, we can open up to them the great vista of the Rest is History Club. So this is a club that you sign up to, costs next to nothing, I would say. At restishistorypod.com, and you get basically all the episodes without adverts. You get access to archive without adverts. You get you come on this splendid thing called the Discord chat, where people chat about history. You get live streams with us and all kinds of goodies. I can't remember what the other goodies are, but I seem to remember they're absolutely tremendous.
Well, the particular goodie that we're talking about in this context is a live event on the question of reputation in history. That's this Wednesday, the 26th of January at 8 o'clock London time. And I'll tell you something else that you get if you become a club member, is that if you bump into me, as two people did this morning at a conference, and you are club members, you get a shout out. So I'm going to give a shout out to James Farrow, who is a friend of the show, club member, and Ernie Wakeford, who is 13.
Oh, that's nice.
And a club member. So that's splendid, isn't it?
Was this a hedgehog saving conference?
Yeah, and Stonehenge tunnel opposing.
Oh, very good.
Yes.
All your causes wrapped into one.
Absolutely.
So we should get back to General Gordon.
Yes. Okay. So Stefan's question, who on earth is General Charles George Gordon? Dominic, do you want to give a kind of very brief resume of his career?
Golly, well, if you were giving a very brief resume, you would say
just a
this.
very brief one.
He's born in 1833. He dies in 1885. Gordon is in some ways for the British, the ultimate imperial hero. He sees action in this huge range of extraordinary places in the Crimean War. In China, he's present at the burning of the Summer Palace by British troops at the end of the Second Opium War. He then commands a small kind of almost paramilitary unit called the Ever Victorious Army in China, fighting against the Taiping Rebellion, which is this kind of this massive and incredibly kind of bloody war involving a kind of heavenly cult, which Gordon helps to defeat. He goes to the Balkans. He goes to the Sudan. Then he has lots of other kind of adventures. And then he ends up going back to the Sudan in 1884. The Sudan is racked with war and rebellion, and with this kind of jihadi group led by a fellow called the Mahdi, who thinks he's kind of a prophet, a chosen one, paving the way for the advent of, I think it's the advent of Jesus, is it, Tom?
It is, yeah.
The return of Jesus. And Gordon ends up trapped in Khartoum, in the capital of the Sudan, with the eyes of the world on him, and the Mahdi's army closing in. The British are desperate finally to rescue him, but do they get there in time? Or we shouldn't give the give the end away. But basically, there's a very dramatic denouement. And then after the story ends, Gordon becomes and I don't think icon is the wrong word. I think icon is absolutely the right word, because he's the key thing about Gordon, apart from all this amazing imperial adventure story, is he's a religious figure. He sees himself as a religious figure. He is he thinks about religion every minute of every day, and the religious side of him has fascinated people ever since.
Yeah. So that second verse by McGonagall, it highlights the ambivalences in his life and in his reputation. So he was very cool in temper, generous and brave, the friend of the poor, the sick and the slave. And a key part of what he's doing in the Sudan is fighting slavery. He is trying to abolish the slave trade. And this is something that he comes across very early in his career, because he gets seconded to Armenia, which is on the kind of frontiers of the Ottoman Empire. And he sees there for himself the slave trading, the obtaining of slaves from Armenia that the Ottomans are doing getting slaves for Constantinople. So that is a theme that runs throughout his life. Yeah. And it's part of what's going on when he goes back to Khartoum. So he is kind of emblematically a figure who fights the slave trade.
He is he is the ultimate liberal imperialist, isn't he? And actually, the funny thing about him is, as imperial heroes go, you were saying about his reputation dipping, but he's one of the, in some ways, I would say, one of the least likely to be cancelled.
Absolutely, and I think we'll come to this. But there is then the other last 3 or 4 lines. And many a poor boy he did educate, and laboured hard to do so early and late. And this is what Lytton Strachey fixes on in his biography. It's what Richard Davenport Hines in a recent biography of him, a kind of very short biographical sketch, describes him as a creep. Gordon never marries. He is notoriously, he gets he's very awkward with women.
Yeah.
But he does devote himself, when he is in charge of the artillery at Gravesend in Kent, he devotes a lot of his time to charitable works, and particularly working with raggedy boys, boys who are starving, urchins. He lets them into his garden. He helps with their education. He provides places on ships. He follows their careers with great interest. And of course, this is seen as a work of great Christian philanthropy. But for Lytton Strachey and for Richard Davenport Hines, it's seen as something altogether more sinister and suspicious. And so that also is a part of the complexity of his reputation, isn't it? And on top of that, there is a kind of rumour that he was an alcoholic. Yeah. So his life is very contested, and I think that everything that makes the Victorians contested is kind of summed up by his career. And you suggested this, and I thought, I don't know about that. But honestly, it's a brilliant topic, and I completely commend
before we
you
get
for
into
it.
The sort of narrative of it, Tom, there's a bit of a Hall of Mirrors side of kind of Gordon's career, isn't there? Because if you read, there are lots of biographies. If you read 3 different biographies, they will give you 3 subtly different accounts of his life and motivations. It's actually very hard to get to a true picture of Gordon, I think, because it depends so much on what weight you put on different people's statements about him, on statements of his own. And it also, I think, so that you talk about Lytton Strachey and eminent Victorians. I mean, I think so much of that portrait of Gordon is kind of self-projection, actually.
Completely.
Completely. I think it, as we'll see, with the sort of the helping the poor boys, a lot of your interpretation of Gordon is on what you're bringing to the table, I think, and your expectations. Anyway.
Well, I think that it also, and it may not surprise you to hear me say this, I think it depends on how seriously you take Gordon's Christianity.
Yeah, I think
and whether you think that Gordon's Christianity is a kind of screen for predatory sexuality or all kinds of things, or whether you think that he
is sincere and
is sincere.
Yeah.
So we can perhaps discuss that as we go.
So we will build up to the huge melodrama of the siege of Khartoum and the fall of Khartoum and the battle with the Mahdi and stuff, but maybe we should go into Gordon and his career first to give people a sort of sense of the background. So he's the son of a lieutenant colonel in the Royal Artillery. He's born in 1833 in Woolwich. He's brought up in a part of his childhood, Tom, in a place you know very well, in Corfu.
In Corfu, yeah.
So he probably played cricket in Corfu, I imagine, as you have.
And he gets sent to a school in Taunton. Yeah. And the playing fields of this school are now the cricket ground of Somerset County Cricket Club.
Oh, it's always nice to have a bit of...
There's definitely a cricket link there, and Gordon was a keen cricketer.
Well, I'm glad for you that this has happened, because I did suggest this, and I know you were a little bit suspicious at first, but it's got Christianity and cricket. So basically, I could have designed it.
And Dominic, it's got eunuchs.
Yes, it has.
Because he made this fame, talking about his boyhood. He was quite a naughty boy, wasn't he? He
was a prankster.
He's a prankster. He goes to the Royal Military Academy in Woolwich. So he's ran but the Arsenal that gives its name to the football club. Signs up to the Royal Engineers. But while he's there, he seems to have started to have kind of religious promptings.
Yeah.
And he famously said later on that at the age of 14, I wished I were an eunuch.
Yeah, it's an unusual. See, I get this is the first example I think of something where it's very hard to know how to interpret that. Did he genuinely wish he were a eunuch? Is he making a remark about, he was struggling with kind of what he would see as sinful, lascivious longings? Because obviously he's going through puberty at 14. How much weight do you? I mean, it's impossible to know, isn't it, Tom? What he means.
Well, I think he clearly has kind of religious promptings. They're not dominating his life at this point, but they're clearly there. And I would guess the likeliest explanation would be that he is feeling urges to do things that are against, Christian teaching, whatever that is. So, having extramarital sex or whatever, or who knows, gay sex. I mean, who knows? But then he gets he qualifies, doesn't he, and gets posted to Pembroke.
Yeah.
To be an engineer at the docks, and there he is born again.
He is. He's born again. I seem to get the impression he's born again multiple times or he goes through.
Well, there are two. I think there are
periods
two kind of great
awakening. Periods of intense religious awakening. This is the first he meets a man called Captain Drew, I think, who's an Irish Protestant, who sort of seems to semi-convert him. And
but this is and it's the Protestant quality of it that is key, because it's this idea of the Spirit descending, of Gordon feeling a sense of personal redemption, and in due course he will have this sense that he's born into Christ. And I think everything about his life suggests that he takes this completely seriously.
Yeah. So when Lytton Strachey and eminent Victorians portrayed him as a hypocrite and a charlatan, I think that is utterly, utterly wrong. Because everything we know about Gordon suggests that he is completely serious about this,
and there's this amazing,
enormously.
This amazing comment on him by someone who knew him, a friend, that he is without the three strongest passions which make men good or bad: the love of money, the love of fame, and the love of women. And those are kind of amazing. It will be a theme throughout his career that he is utterly contemptuous of money, and whenever he's offered the salary for as leading men in China or Sudan or wherever, he rejects it, and he shares the money. He shares the money out among people who need it more. The love of fame. I mean, again, this has a kind of. You might think that someone who ends up the most famous man in the world, this would be a ludicrous thing to say, but again, he so when he's in the Sudan, the first time, he has a kind of deputy who he sends out to go and find a lake, so that he won't have the glory of winning it. And he gets, for his work on the frontier in Armenia, he gets elected a fellow of the Royal Geographical Society. And then he turns it down because he feels that this will raise his profile too high. So again, I think that you can see that this is a genuine instinct. And so the love of women, Lytton Strachey assumes that he's gay, which, as you say, may well be a reflection more of Lytton Strachey, who was gay, than Gordon, because it actually does seem that Gordon's shyness is around women.
Yes, he's incredibly shy around women, except for his sister, he's got an older sister, I think, that he confides in.
But the attempt to control his sexual needs are focused on women.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think it's pure speculation, the idea that he's gay, and it goes hand in hand with all this stuff about the boys. But just because you are kind to small boys and educate them and are charitable, it doesn't mean that you necessarily have sinister motives.
And we should say that he's kind to small girls as well, and he's very kind to the elderly too.
Yeah, so, he is. It's a really interesting thing, because of course now our instinct when confronted with Victorian philanthropy, the cultural sort of expectation now is that it will be exposed as mere hypocrisy, and it's all a cover for something else. But in Gordon's case, I think there's every reason to think it is absolutely heartfelt and genuine. He doesn't do it for fame. He doesn't do it for attention. The thing about his sort of sexuality that I think we can say is that he does have clearly he's one of these people who has a sense of, is disgust too strong? This sense of revulsion from his own body. He talks later on about how he thinks
hence about the eunuch thing.
How he thinks the body is a mere sheath for your soul that will be discarded later on. And he has this is
but this is theologically bred as well. So again, the question of whether that's a heretical.
It's kind of Gnosticism, isn't it?
It is. It's verging on Gnosticism. The idea that the body itself is corrupt. I mean, that's not what conventional Christianity teaches. But he does hold to that because he's essentially self-educated as a Christian. And so he reads the Bible over and over again. I mean, he has an incredibly rich knowledge of Scripture, but it leads him into kind of some faintly heterodox opinions.
That's right, yeah.
And so the question then is, well, does he arrive at the heterodox opinions because that, he's prompted by his sexuality to do that, or vice versa? And I suppose we live in a post-Freudian age where our instinct is always to assume that one's belief in scriptural theology is determined by one's sexuality. But I think it's possible to overdo that.
Yeah. I think what we can say, though, Tom, is that when he meets people, particularly later in his life, I mean, they meet him and they're like, oh, you're Chinese Gordon. You're the fellow who commanded the ever-victorious army, this great adventurer. And then he just starts banging onto them about his kind of heretical ideas. And lots of people at the time, not just subsequently, lots of kind of senior military people and administrators, they think he's completely mad.
Yeah.
This is one of the fascinating things about him, that even at the time people say, well, he's brilliant and he's a genius and he's incredibly brave and has complete integrity, but he's also a lunatic.
Well, or a saint.
Yes.
And so the margins between lunacy and saintliness, even in the Victorian period, are quite fine. So anyway, so that's a kind of general, I guess, kind of scan of Gordon's psychology. We've dealt with that in 5 minutes. But before we come to the break, why don't we just get him to China?
Okay.
Because it's in China that he first becomes famous.
So his first big thing is when he's in his early 20s, he gets sent to the Crimea. And there he makes a name for himself. He's very brave. He actually says later on, I'd hoped to be killed when I was... I mean, it's hard to know how much this is true of him in the Crimea, in the Crimean War.
But again, so Strachey kind of casts that as a death wish.
Yeah.
But again, you can see that as bred of his understanding of theology.
Yeah, because he thinks it's the gateway to heaven, doesn't he?
So Garnet Wolsey, who he meets, who is also in the Crimean War, young Irishman, who will go on to become a very, very eminent general. And in fact, the man who leads the expedition to try and rescue Gordon in 1885. And he says that life to Gordon was but a pilgrim's progress between the years of early manhood and the heaven he now dwells in, the home he always longed for. So I think it's perfectly possible to see Gordon's bravery and his willingness to court death as an expression of his conviction that when he dies, he will be joined with the Saviour.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. So anyway, he goes to the Crimea, and there he kind of does this. He's a great surveyor and a kind of engineer, basically. So he will kind of crawl out of the trench and crawl close to the Russian trenches and sketch their forts. And he's brilliant at that. I mean, he's a brilliant kind of sketcher of enemy positions and so on. Physically, he's not a kind of strapping person by any means. He's quite slight. He's quite nondescript, except for these. People talk about these piercing kind of grey-blue eyes, and people are struck by them even at the time. In the Crimea, he picks up his one big vice, which is cigarette smoking.
Yeah, I didn't realize that cigarettes...
No, neither of us knew this, Tom.
Introduced at the Crimean War.
Yes, we've both learned something from doing this podcast. So yeah, that cigarette smoking became a big thing with the Crimean War. He becomes a complete addict. He's a chain smoker. So he's distinguished himself in the Crimea as a surveyor and as a kind of engineer. And he's then sent to the Danube as a surveyor to kind of help sketch out the frontier between the Ottoman and Russian empires, the new frontier at the end of the Crimean War. Then, as you say, he's sent to Armenia, where he slides down Mount Ararat. Did you see that?
That's right.
Mount Ararat, and sort of slides down it. I mean, that perfectly captures the man, doesn't it? Because it's the combination of kind of religiosity and demented adventuring.
But also Ararat is the mountain on which Noah's Ark is meant to have landed. But Gordon doubts that. So this will also become a theme.
Yeah, he knows better.
Yes, exactly.
He's a great man for discovering biblical locations, isn't he?
As we will find out.
As we'll find out. And then, so he has all these sort of adventures. He goes and meets Kurdish villagers, and he goes to Tbilisi, the capital of Georgia, and so on. And then in the autumn of 1860, he goes to China. And China is in the throes of the most extraordinary convulsion.
Well, Dominic, let's take a quick break here. So, and when we come back, tell us what the great convulsion that's going on when Gordon arrives in China, what it is. We'll see you in a few minutes.
This episode is brought to you by the Financial Times. I think we both agree, Dominic, that in the clamour of countless voices competing to break the news and telling you the what, the who, and the where on these stories, there's often something missing, isn't there?
There is, Tom, because I think to get a true understanding of any story, you really need to know why. Take FT journalism. It goes deeper, providing the insight, analysis, and perspective to help you see the whole story and truly understand the issues that matter. Why did it happen? Why is it important? And why will it matter? I've got a brilliant example. So they had an article recently, a fascinating article about why populism became popular. And this Financial Times article absolutely delved into that. It was so interesting.
And does it nail it?
Yeah, it nailed it. Absolutely nailed it. And it really made me look at populism in a new light.
Well, if you're interested in the why, we have good news.
Yes, listeners to The Rest is History can save more than 40% on an annual digital subscription to the Financial Times by visiting ft.com/history. For the why, Financial Times.
This episode is brought to you by Rocket Money.
Tom, we often talk about how to organise our finances. I'm very conscious that I'm paying for a lot of mad subscriptions. And there's one thing that we've talked about often on this show. It's the thing that we probably hate more than any other, and it's a hidden fee. I would love to get my finances under control. There are all these things piling up on our bank statements, and I think I need to fix this problem. I need to sort this out and to stop this.
I mean, my finances are so chaotic that I need this app.
So I'll tell you what it is. It's called Rocket Money. It's a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions. It monitors your spending and it helps to lower your bills so that you can grow your savings.
With Rocket Money, you can track all of your subscriptions and you can easily cancel within the app with just a few taps, saving you time, avoiding charges. And you can also set budgets and goals and get personalized insights and regular reports to track how you're doing. They will even send you real-time alerts for large transactions, upcoming bills, refunds, and even low balances. So let Rocket Money help you reach your financial goals faster. Join at rocketmoney.com/ishistory.
That's rocketmoney.com/ishistory. rocketmoney.com/ishistory.
Hello, welcome back. We are talking Gordon of Khartoum, but before he became Gordon of Khartoum, he was known as Chinese Gordon. And Dominic, I interrupted you by going to a break. You were telling us what the convulsion was that China was afflicted by when he arrives.
So China is a bit of a basket case in the 19th century. It's involved in two different wars at once at this point. One is the Second Opium War. So basically the British and the French are trying to open up China and seize kind of treaty ports. And
so they can flog them drugs.
So they can, yes, we can sell them drugs.
Yeah.
And that's going to culminate in the burning of the Winter Palace in Beijing, at which...
that's 1858.
In which Gordon is present, along with Sir Harry Flashman, who meets him at the end of the book, Flashman and the Dragon.
Well, you know, this whole way through, I've been thinking that Gordon is a kind of upstanding Flashman.
He is.
Because he goes everywhere, doesn't he?
Yeah, he has that same kind of trajectory where he just keeps popping up in these strange places.
But he very strongly disapproves of the burning of...
He doesn't approve of it at all. And actually in the Flashman book, he's there as a sort of pale eyewitness. He just comes in briefly. But you're right, he doesn't really approve of this.
And he disapproves of the French looting.
Yeah, the looting was just
doesn't
shocking.
Like looting.
Yeah.
So all these kind of things that people now hold against the British Empire. So the idea of looting stuff.
Yeah.
You know, we hear a lot about with reference to British museums holding imperial loot. This isn't entirely a 21st century perspective. Gordon had that perspective as well.
Yeah, I mean, snowflakes like Gordon were complaining about it in the... Sorry,
Yes.
Tom, you walked into that one. Right. But that's not really the big story, extraordinary as it may seem. The big story is the Taiping Rebellion, which is more your kind of thing, Tom, because it's mad Christianity.
It is.
Do you want to tell us about the Taiping Rebellion?
So the Taiping Rebellion is, I mean, carnage. A guy called Hong Xiuquan, I hope I pronounced that.
That was beautifully done.
Some approximation to how it should be pronounced. Essentially decides that he's the younger brother of Jesus. And for very complicated reasons that I would need to spend more time in the Bodleian studying, basically the whole of China goes insane and agrees with him. And the Taipings, as they're called, the Qing dynasty is absolutely up against it because of the Opium Wars and general kind of vicissitude. The Taiping Rebellion is a murderous, horrific, bloodthirsty process of civil war.
But it's also a kind of religious crusade, isn't it?
Kind of. And so a lot of people in Britain think that it's Protestantism coming to China. And so there's quite a lot of enthusiasm in Britain for the Taipings, despite the fact that they're basically murderous and
well, could you not see, Tom, the Taiping Rebellion and the creation of the Mahdiist kind of state in the Sudan? They're both places where Christianity and westernization and modernization and imperialism have arrived with a great shock in the kind of mid-Victorian period, and kind of traditional structures have been splintered, and these are ways of trying to react to that.
And you know who pointed that out was actually Strachey. So Lytton Strachey drew the analogy between Hong Xiuquan and the Mahdi.
I'm disappointed to find that I'm in the
same...
They
both began as religious reformers, ended as rebel kings.
Right. Well, I wouldn't have thought of us as similar people, but clearly Lytton and I are.
Specifically, the issue and why the British, and specifically Gordon, get sucked into it is that the Taipings are menacing Shanghai.
Yeah, and the bankers and merchants there,
European merchants,
basically raise their own little army, the ever victorious army.
Which is
the name of it makes
it
sound,
isn't it?
It makes it sound absolutely fantastic, but actually it's a really ragtag, shambolic band of kind of mercenaries and drunkards, and it's commanded by this American guy called Frederick Townsend Ward, who does seem to be quite, doesn't he? He wears a frock coat, and I think he's quite a dashing figure, Frederick Townsend Ward. He meets Flashman and the Dragon. But he's killed, I think, and his successor is a French-American adventurer called Henry, I don't know how to pronounce it, Bergevin, I don't know. Anyway, he's a complete drunkard. And so they boot him out, the sort of the bankrollers of the ever victorious army. It's quite small. It's only about 5,000 or 6,000 people. They boot him out.
And mostly Chinese, right?
Yeah, lots of them. Not all Chinese, but yes, mostly Chinese,
yeah.
Exactly. They boot him out, and they want somebody else to do it. And basically they ask around who's around in China, and the British give them Gordon. And that's it showed that the ever victorious army is probably better known than it should be in some ways, because it's quite a small outfit. And the reason the fact that they give them Gordon tells you it's not that important, because Gordon has actually never led an army into battle before. I mean, he's an engineer and a surveyor.
Yeah, he's an artilleryman, isn't he?
Yeah, exactly. So he doesn't really know what he's doing, but he turns out to be very good at it. To be good at commanding.
Well, because there are lots of rivers and canals and all kinds of stuff, and so an ability to draw maps.
Yes,
which Gordon's very good at.
And they're all sort of steaming up and down rivers and stuff like this. But also, he's very strict, isn't he? He's a complete disciplinarian. He bans hard liquor and so on. And he
takes his pay cut and he gives it to his troops.
But he has this extraordinary persona where he always goes into battle smoking a cheroot, and he carries a cane.
And unarmed.
Yeah, exactly. He goes in unarmed. He carries this cane, doesn't he? What do they call it? His magic baton or something. I can't remember what they're...
Well, so again, Lytton Strachey, who, we've said is a bit of a bitch, but actually, saying about Gordon, he seemed to pass through every danger with the scatheless equanimity of a demigod.
Yeah, it's a very impressive... I mean, this is very impressive stuff.
It's very cool, isn't it?
At one point, the artillerymen mutiny because he won't let them loot, and he manages to kind of brazen that out.
Which again is a kind of something that happens throughout his career.
Yeah.
Is that, he fixes those gleaming blue eyes and people just crumble.
He's always going into situations where lots of
Unarmed.
armed men want to kill him, and he turns up with his cigar, and they all just sort of say,
and his love of Jesus,
because
it all works.
His sort of sanctity, it is like a kind of protective kind of veil, isn't it? Do you not think? I mean, people don't quite know what to make of him,
and I think both the Chinese and in due course people in the Sudan are stunned by his chastity as well. So the sense of him as a demigod is Strachey's word, that this is someone who is very, very unusual and has a kind of almost supernatural quality to him. And that, combined with his evident military talents, means that basically within 18 months, he's won an absolutely crushing victory.
Yeah.
Taipings have all been booted out.
So the Taipings are defeated by the Imperial Army, the sort of Qing army, plus the ever-victorious army. Now, I think the role of the ever-victorious army is probably a bit inflated, and that certainly Chinese histories don't give it as much weight by any means.
Well, but isn't that partly because the Taipings are seen as precursors as the communists?
That's right, Tom. That's right. But actually, when you look at the numbers involved, there are hundreds of thousands of men in sort of on various armies in the field. It's implausible that Gordon's little band is the single decisive factor. But I do think,
except that he gets this incredible distinction.
Yes,
the yellow jacket, which is only 20 mandarins in the whole of the empire have it. Yeah, and Gordon gets given it.
So the Order of the Garter, isn't it? It's the Order of the Garter of China, basically.
Yeah, and I think he's the only non-Chinese person to have it.
Yeah,
and so I think that is, one can take the revisionism too far. I
Maybe
think it was clearly seen by the Chinese themselves as incredibly impressive. And so he's 30 by this point?
Yeah, he's about 30, isn't he?
And so he's been given this incredible award by the Chinese emperor. He's commanded an army, and then he has to go back to England, and he's unbelievably famous, and he hates it. He hates the fame. He hates the celebrity.
And what happens to him? He spends the next 6 years basically repairing forts in Gravesend
and helping out raggedy
so
boys.
He sent to Gravesend, which
pensioners.
obviously had always been, because of its importance, sort of naval, sort of coastal importance, had always been very heavily defended. And they basically say to him, go and sort out these forts and, modernize the defences and stuff. But he knows as well as everybody else, they're never going to be used.
It's never going to happen.
I mean, it's a complete waste of his time. I think they
So
just
he gets up early, doesn't he? Has a cold shower.
Yeah.
Then he goes out and does good, reads the Bible, goes and supervises the fort, and then he spends all his afternoons doing good.
Yes, and clearly he's a bit. There clearly is some point at which he's feeling a bit miserable that life or fate has turned against him and doesn't know what to do with himself. But then he goes to a dinner party. Do you see this? He goes to a dinner party in Greenwich, and as luck would have it, while he's dressing for dinner, his gaze falls on the open pages of the Bible.
Yes.
So he's a man who reads the Bible while dressing for dinner, basically, and he sees the first epistle of St. John: whosoever shall confess that Jesus is the Son of God, God dwelleth in him, and he in God. And on seeing this, he's kind of a man transformed.
Yeah.
He says, "Gosh, all I need to do is believe in Jesus as the Son of God." I mean, it's sort of real evangelicalism, isn't it?
And it's from that his philanthropical exercises proceed.
And he becomes very excited about the philanthropy. So in Gravesend, he sets up this little sort of, it's almost like a school, isn't it? They meet twice a week. He teaches all these boys.
And he calls the boys wangs.
Yeah. Now that might sound...
Again, may raise eyebrows. But
he calls them his wang because in China, a general or a chief was called, a warlord was called a wang. And so he had wangs in his ever-victorious army.
So that could be misinterpreted.
And the boys, obviously, you can imagine the boys probably think it's hilarious and brilliant that they're being called wangs. And they do have prayers, they sing hymns, he gives them bread and soup and stuff, and they do their lessons. And then he places them in work. So
in ships, doesn't he?
In ships. So there'll be a ship's boy and all this. And he has a big map, as you said at the beginning of the episode. He has this big map, and every night, he and his wangs gather round, and he gets one of them to chart where the other boys, the old boys, are on the map. I mean, I think that's all actually pretty sweet. and
Well, I
admirable.
think you've got to take, do you take this being born again, this sense that God's grace has come upon him seriously, or do you not?
Well,
And
in John, is it John Pollock? Yeah, John Pollock's book, Gordon, the Man Behind the Legend, a very kind of admiring biography of Gordon. He has quite a lot of quotes from
the
old
Wangs.
boys of the Gordon Academy,
Yeah.
ex-Wangs, who basically say, Gordon changed my life. I owe him everything. It was wonderful. He was such a great man, all this sort of stuff.
So,
he's not Jimmy Savile. Let's put it that way.
Well, there's actually the week that this is going out. So I can't remember whether it's on the day of his birth, 28th of January, or his death, 26th of January. But there's a ceremony at Gravesend in front of the statue of him there. So he's still remembered there.
That's nice.
Yeah, it is nice, I think. Anyway, so we're not being cynical about it.
No, I'm definitely not cynical about Gordon. I think Gordon is, at this point,
a Christian hero.
Well, the philanthropy is incredibly impressive, I think.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do it myself.
Because of course not. You can...
I'm far too selfish and lazy.
Of course,
I've got no intention of doing it.
You keep the money, but he's being paid quite a lot, and he gives it all away, as he does throughout his entire life. Do you know what, Dominic? We've spent 40 minutes.
We haven't got very far.
Well, so Gordon's great phrase, "Inaction is terrible to me." So he's been to China, he's been in Gravesend, he's hanging out with the Wangs. Now comes the point where he goes to the country that will really make him famous, which is the Sudan. And so tomorrow we'll come back and we will talk about Gordon's career in the Sudan, the 2 times that he goes to that country. If, however, you are a member of the Rest is History Club, you don't need to wait, because you can listen to the whole thing today. Incredible value. So we will see you in 30 seconds if you're a member of the Rest is History Club, and we'll see you tomorrow if you're not.
We should call them our Wangs.
I like that.
If you're a Wang, you can carry on listening. If not, too bad. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to The Rest is History. For bonus episodes, early access, ad-free listening, and access to our chat community, please sign up at restishistorypod.com. That's restishistorypod.com.